Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
It's The In Show, Australia's only show dedicated to innovation from Adelaide, Australia and across the globe.
It's Troy Sincock and David Grice once again, and we've got some really interesting people to introduce you to once again today. There have been some incredible ideas on the show thus far.
I just love the way these people just start with passion and they build on that passion and create a business out of it.
We've found that people that are innovating and becoming entrepreneurs come from all aspects of life, but ultimately the thing that sort of bonds them all together is the desire to want to change things and improve people's lives.
And solve problems in the process. I think that's the most exciting part about this is we're actually finding these people are actually developing their business out of a need that they've come across.
It's incredible the way that things are evolving so quickly, though. If you discover that need, you've got to be on it quick, smart, and have things in full action because it's a competitive field, this whole entrepreneurship business.
Absolutely. And talking about evolving, we've got some exciting news this week.
Who knew we could evolve so quickly?
7 weeks.
We entered the In Show into a podcast competition, and we haven't done too badly.
Well, it looks like we've been chosen as a national top 10 finalist for the Podfest competition run by, I think it's Nova Entertainment.
It certainly is. I don't know how that happened, but we are extremely appreciative of your support and really excited to see the outcome, which we'll find out in about a week or so. And coming up today on the show, Claire's got more news, including a story especially for people who hate putting on sunscreen. I am definitely one of those people. You've not seen whiter skin in your life.
And the greasy, feeling that you get when you... Anyway. And Nick Condon, Executive Director of Innovation and Commercialisation at Business SA, is going to talk about the role they're playing in innovation in South Australia. And also we're going to delve into the world of holograms with Will Tamblin from Foxon Photonics. And his idea started by a couple of mates having a beer in the shed.
That's how all good ideas started.
I think so.
It's The In Show. It's all about innovation. You can check us out at theinshow.online, Facebook and Twitter. Now, here's Kirk Drage from Leap Sheep with a little inspiration. He's all about helping building businesses by building great people with some words on the importance of understanding mental health in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, look, it's a really important topic, and it's a great thing to talk about because I think so often it's one of those topics that you, as a founder, it's easy not to talk about because you might think that you're the only one going through it, like a lot of these kind of mental health challenges. But really, all founders, when you start to speak about it, are facing the same kinds of challenges. It really is a roller coaster in the early days of a startup. You don't necessarily know who your customer is. You don't know really what product you're building. You don't know where you're going to get your money from. You don't know where you're going to get your staff to build your company from. And sometimes you have great days where you meet a customer and they're amazed by what you're doing, and if you could possibly build that product, they'd buy 10 of them. And other days, you built something, spent a whole lot of time and effort and potentially money, take it to a customer and they go, that's nothing like what we would ever use, and I'd never buy that even if you made it 10 times better. And so there's this constant roller coaster of managing sort of expectations and emotions. And this goes back to some research that's been done by many organisations now that just shows that if you've got co-founders on your journey, you're more likely to be successful. And I think that's got a lot to do with mental health and the ability for you as an entrepreneur to stick to the journey, believe and have faith in the journey that you're on and the process that you're using to manage those risks, because that's really important. And not be impacted by those knockbacks that you have, because you will constantly face knockbacks and you'll constantly face challenges. But it's really about how you face those challenges and how you build a support network around you, and a support network that understands what you're going through. Starting one of these kind of companies is very different than running a normal business. It's very different than being an employee. And that means that there's only a relatively small number of people that can relate to the problems that you're facing and can empathise with you. So it's finding those people that are really key.
The In Show, in the news with Claire Murphy.
Well, researchers from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology have created a device that can sense and report sexual assault. It's a small smart sticker called Intrepid that attaches to the user's clothing. For the device to work, the user must download the smartphone app and enter the contact details of 5 people who will be alerted in an emergency. So how does it work? Well, the sticker has two modes: active for when the user is unconscious and passive for when the user can press a button to activate the device. It contains a microprocessor and multiple sensors that memorise how the user usually takes off their clothes. When the piece of clothing the sticker is attached to is taken off differently, it sends a message via Bluetooth to the user's phone. Do you consent? If the user doesn't respond in 30 seconds, the phone makes a loud sound to alert others. If the user doesn't respond to this in 20 seconds, notifications including the whereabouts of the user are sent to the 5 contacts. Then the user's phone begins recording audio and calls one of the contacts. It also alerts emergency services and records every encounter when no response is submitted, meaning it could be used as evidence in court. The inventors hope they can create another version that doesn't have to be connected to the user's phone. Researchers in the US have created a sunscreen that could last forever. The main ingredient? DNA from salmon. Scientists believe that the sun's rays can cause cancer by damaging the DNA in our cells. But German and his associates wanted to know what would happen if a sacrificial film of DNA was exposed to the same ultraviolet light. So they spread the salmon DNA on a piece of glass, let it dry to create a film, and exposed it to ultraviolet light. They then measured how much UVB light, which makes up the majority of the sun's rays, and UVA light, which is radiation that gives you a tan, could make it through the film. The result was that 90% of UVB and 20% of UVA light was blocked from piercing the DNA film. Plus, the film let in less light the longer it was exposed. It's not available in the supermarkets yet, but this could be a better alternative to chemical sunscreens. Imagine only having to apply a sunscreen-like substance once and still being protected from skin cancer forever. A new study shows that our social media presence reflects our real-life personalities. There are plenty of stereotypical Facebook users, including the oversharers, the selfie obsessors and the fitness freaks. But now we know how these online personas mirror who we really are. Researchers from the US, Australia and Turkey have analysed a concept called attachment theory, which was developed in the 60s. It outlines 3 unique relationship styles to explain how we develop and maintain relationships. These include the insecure avoidant, which is someone who doesn't trust others and avoids connecting with others, the insecure anxious, which is someone who fears rejection, and the secure, which is someone who feels they can connect. The researchers found that those who avoided making connections most likely unfriend people rather than messaging or sending friend requests. They also found that those who feared rejection were less likely to unfriend people and more likely to be unfriended by others. However, researchers were able to coax the insecure participants into acting in a secure manner online by exposing them to visuals related to strong relationships. They say this method could also be used in the real world. And that's what's in news this week.
Thanks, Claire. Well, David, lifelong sunscreen. That sounds pretty damn good to me.
I'll tell you what, when I was a kid, I remember the time where I was bathing in Sydney. I think it was Bondi Beach as a 7 or 8 year old, and got absolutely fried, and so much so that my mum and dad brought me home. I was in agony. They put me with calamine lotion underneath the air conditioner so that I would stay cool. So something like this would have been an absolute godsend right then.
And particularly relevant in countries like Australia. Don't they say that? Well, like for me, I have Scottish heritage. I've got the whitest skin known to man. I'd love desperately to be able to go out in the sun and not have to put on sunscreen, but it's just an absolute necessity. I can't avoid it. And it really is, at times, it makes you determine whether you're going to go out in the sun or not, simply because of the process involved in having to put the sunscreen on from head to toe, that kind of thing.
And I think about our sporting people, that our cricketers that are in full sun for 8 hours a day, and if they didn't have to worry, could you imagine how much easier that would be on their lives, number one, but also on the health system down the track, where we wouldn't have so many people suffering from skin cancers and so forth.
No, it sounds like it's really solving a significant problem in a place like a climate of Australia. There are some ripple effects with what we're dealing with here, isn't it? Vitamin D. People stay out of the sun a lot in Australia, despite the fact we're known for being these sort of bronzed beach-going people. But the sun's very, very harsh in Australia, so we find ourselves trying to get away from it a lot of the time. So there are these subsequent problems that come with avoiding the sun.
And on top of that too comes these places that I know that exist where you actually get sunburn in the shade. And there are some countries where the force of the sun is so significant that it does that. So I think, again, this could be something that really revolutionises how people can enjoy their lives outside of, the normal day-to-day.
It's all about innovation on the In Show. Next, our Innovator of the Week will tell us how an idea that began over a few beers has now become a reality.
Adelaide is starting to be recognised as a smart city, nationally and globally. The City of Churches is rapidly gaining a reputation as the city for innovation. Smart city innovation is becoming a big part of our future. The Adelaide Smart City Studio is supporting people that are creating new smart city products and services for global markets. What we've taken for granted is now being embraced by residents and visitors alike. Station sponsor, Adelaide Smart City Studio, creating opportunities.
It's Troy Sincock and David Grice on The In Show. Find our full interviews at theinshow.online. And in the next 10 minutes, we talk to Nick Condon about Business SA and how they're helping innovators.
The In Show Innovator of the Week. Thanks to our sponsor, Adelaide Smart City Studio.
Yeah, this segment is dedicated to discovering the hidden gems in innovation and finding out how they got going.
And today, Will Tamblin joins us from Vox on Photonics. And I'm really fascinated to find out how an idea that could develop in a shed over a couple of beers has now turned into something that is taking us into the world of holograms. So, Will, what led you down the path to create what you've done with Vox on Photonics?
My mate Gav and I used to have we called it a Thursday night lab session, which was just an excuse to hang out in the shed, have a few beers and come up with crazy ideas. And the crazier, the better. And, none of them were very practical. They're all very silly. And then one night, I said to Gav, what are we going to make next? And I said, let's make a robot with a holographic projector for a head. And Gav said, that's impossible. Holographic projectors don't exist. And I said, exactly. So let's build one.
And so how long ago was that?
This is 10 years ago now.
Wow.
So we weren't actually thinking we'd ever actually do it. But we started.
What's your background?
I've always been a tinkerer, but I've also got a computer science background and worked as a software engineer for 20 years.
So the idea came?
Yeah, and the idea came and started off with just a laser pointer and a piece of cardboard, and we shone the laser pointer on the cardboard and moved the cardboard back and forth really, really quickly, and we're able to make a line float in midair. And then we got a high-speed Dremel and had a disc with a slot cut out of it, and we were able to shine the laser through the spinning disc, and as it hit the cardboard was moving back and forward, it made individual dots appear. And then we thought, hang on a second, if we can make one row of dots, why not make more? And then we started hacking around with projectors and blowing stuff up and electrocuting ourselves and making fires happen. It was great fun.
It would have been. And so just explain how the holographic image works. I mean, presumably it has to, a light source has to project onto something in order for it to appear like it's floating?
That's correct, yes. So if you think about the path of the photon as it leaves the projector, it's got to hit something and scatter off it. And the trick that we've got is it hits the same surface but at different positions. So if you've ever been at a campfire and grabbed a stick out of the campfire and waved it around in a circle, you see that it leaves that trace of light behind it. And it's that same concept of persistence of vision, that the eye is too slow to see something that's moving that fast. So what we do is we've got a flat membrane that moves up and down really, really quickly. And here I am moving my hands up and down like everyone can see me. But and as the membrane, the projection surface moves through the volume, we project thousands of frames a second of slices of a 3D model. So if you're familiar with 3D printing, how a 3D printer builds up a plastic model layer by layer by layer, we're doing exactly the same thing, but 30 times a second.
It sounds amazing that it went from this thing that, as you said, was just a ridiculous idea that you didn't think you were actually going to get off the ground to all of a sudden making this thing happen. In your explanation of it, it sounds fascinating every step of the way, but there must have been a point where you had one of those steps become much harder than others. What was that?
Well, I think the biggest one was the decision to quit the day job and go after this as a full-time thing with had a wife and family to support, and with my wife's backing, of course. It was that moment of, if I don't do this now, I'll regret it forever. Personally, that was the biggest moment. But technologically, there was all sorts of crazy sort of moments where we had to come up with a bodge solution, because we were doing this off a zero budget to start off with, and lots of fun. And as I said, blowing stuff up and making stuff catch fire.
So this has all sorts of applications, which is really exciting too, for like the medical profession, but also gaming. It serves a lot of purpose.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where if you it's a volumetric display, so it's a display like any monitor, any computer monitor. So it's like saying, well, what are the applications for a computer monitor? Well, we're doing exactly the same thing, except it's three-dimensional and volumetric, and so a lot of interest from the medical sectors, from out-of-home advertising, trade shows, and experiential marketing and stuff like that. We've got a pilot program happening in a couple of schools here in South Australia. We've got interest from universities all around the world. We're shipping one to Harvard next week. So it's a huge variety of different applications and things that people want to use our tech for. Yeah,
and you've had a trip over to Silicon Valley, and
been over a couple of times.
Yeah, so tell us about how that went for you.
It was it's really interesting. It's big. There's a lot of money there, which is quite encouraging, considering we're going to be seeking investment. There's also, there's also recently becoming a lot more VC money here in Australia. So it's a good time to be looking for investment. One of the things that I discovered about basically the Silicon Valley culture is that people aren't afraid to tell you how good they are. And here in Australia, if you do that, you sort of get that tall poppy syndrome and stuff like that. So we tend to be a lot more, reserved about telling everyone about ourselves and stuff like that. So I think that's something that we should be aware of as a culture here in South Australia in particular. It was good fun though over there.
Well, thank you so much for coming in. Really amazing to hear about how a simple idea around a few beers can turn into something that's actually real and tangible. What's in for you right now?
It's hard to put it down to one thing. I guess it's just that it's an exciting time to be alive, and all of these different branches of technology are all coming together, and there's this crazy concept of the technological singularity that is a combination of AI and all those other different technologies. But I think the biggest thing is now is the time to be alive, and it's really exciting.
Anything's possible, right?
Anything's possible. So crazy, it might just work.
As you've proven. Will Tamblin from Vox on Photonics, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
It's the In Show. It's all about innovation. We'll hear from our influencer next and find out how Business SA is assisting with innovation and commercialisation. And shortly, Claire returns with the networking events, meetups and info sessions you can check out this week.
The In Show with this week's influencer.
Now, this is a segment about those influential minds disrupting industries and spearheading innovation. Nick Condon, Executive Director, Innovation and Commercialisation at Business SA, joins us. Now, Nick, what kind of role is Business SA playing in innovation in this state?
Yeah, good question, Troy. I mean, I guess the first thing to outline, so Business SA, the South Australian Chamber of Commerce, we're about a 178-year-old organisation. One of the older ones, and even for us, starting at home, we consider ourselves a 178-year-old startup. That mentality has to be there that everyone's being disrupted to some level. And if we're not considering on our own bat how we're changing, how we're evolving, how we're looking to innovate, then we can't be that organisation that other businesses are looking at. We've got about 4,500 businesses that are members, but we really do support the broader South Australian business community. And for us, there's a couple of different roles. One is connection, so getting those organisations, getting the software vendors, getting the right thinkers into the state to really help provoke thought for people. And the second part really is to educate. We're not subject matter experts in every single field of every single business, but some of those entrepreneurial mindsets, some of those things that get businesses thinking, we've got a real role to be playing in that regard.
Mm-hmm. And you also do a lot of advocacy work as well. I mean, I notice you're often in the media talking and advocating for small business.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're probably in the media about 5,000 times a year. It feels like that anyway. Look, part of our role is absolutely advocacy. I mean, our strapline is working for your business, working for South Australia. The macro, we've got to set the right environment in South Australia for business. So a lot of our time is spent working with government to create the right programs, to create the right infrastructure, to get things in place so that businesses can prosper. The other part of it is the working for individual businesses. And again, giving them the capability they need to grow, to innovate, to progress.
What's the benefits for an innovator in South Australia? Is it just the being based here where things are a little bit more affordable? Obviously, we're dealing with like sort of a global economy, so people can be accessed from all over the world. Is that what you're encouraging?
Yeah, it's an interesting question as well. I mean, I think for us, there's never been a better time to be more. Gosh, I sound like the Prime Minister for a second, don't I? It's never been a better time. But really, there has never been a better time for South Australia to be globally competitive. Exports is only about 5% at the moment for the state, but really that opportunity. I mean, we fed everyone at our table, right? Between South Australia, I think you'd say that most businesses have looked after everyone here. We really need to start looking for those export markets. The Asia region, there's some great stuff happening, and you don't have to be the largest player in China to have a huge product growth. Part of that, absolutely. I think the appeal is that there's a global competitiveness. In saying that, though, to be global out, you've also got to consider the global in. You're not just competing against the person at Marion and the person, who's down at Victor Harbour. All of a sudden, you're competing against everyone globally as well. So whilst your customer base has grown, your competitors have probably grown as well. One of the good things I think about South Australia, though, is that there is a real sense of transition going on in the state at the moment. You'd say the things that we've done that have made us famous in the past, they're not going to be the things that keep us famous in the future. Manufacturing, absolutely evolving. And I think, we've got some great manufacturing minds here. How do we evolve those minds into robotics, AI, advanced manufacturing? But we do need to look and say, well, what are the industries we can absolutely grow in as well? It's exciting to drive down North Terrace and see this real mecca of medical research. I think that's a great piece that, wasn't definitely there a couple of years ago. But lots of other industries coming up as well.
So you're the Executive Director of Innovation and Commercialisation at Business SA. What does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, good question. There's probably an inward piece and there's also an outward piece to my role. Inward piece is managing our enterprise technology team. So day-to-day, I'm looking after a technology team of CRM experts, business analysts, and desktop and support technology guys. We've just finished a pretty major transformation, moving to the cloud. So, we had a lot of old systems and really weren't able to leverage a lot of business and data and intelligence. Also, we had a lot of tech that meant you had to be in the building to use it. And we've got members right across the state. We want to be able to walk into their office. We want to be in a cafe chatting through, maybe even having a cheeky glass of wine and doing business, because that's really how South Australians work. So we spend a lot of time in the tech space looking at our own systems and our own process. And, we really take quite seriously that we're a lighthouse organisation. Businesses are looking at us to see how things are being done right. The last thing we want to do is be hypocritical. So there's that real inward technology sense there. Most other people say I sit on Facebook all day. That's probably only half true. But the other part, and this is the bit I love, is actually working with small businesses, making the collaborations happen. I spend a lot of time talking with small businesses, new ideas, things that are happening, and leveraging 4,500 or 5,000 South Australian businesses to share those ideas with. So a really great story. A young lady called Emily created a company called Nailbreak. Effectively, she recognised that people are busy during the day and they don't necessarily get out to do the things they need to, haircuts, nails, those things. So she's created a business where she's going into businesses and will do their nails and those quick cosmetic pieces. It's great for business because I've had something out of the office for an hour and a half. You've got them in the office, they're getting their thing done for 30 minutes and they're back to work. So real productivity benefits, but also for her, saw the opportunity and seized on it. So, we're helping her at the moment spread her wings a little bit, show her products and her wares to different businesses. And again, trying to share more of those great stories. Because at the end of the day, we've got a great business community. And I think South Australians really do believe and want to support each other. A big part of my role is trying to share those business stories and help businesses connect and collaborate.
So, Nick, before you go, what is in for you right now?
What is in for me right now? I mean, I guess I'm loving this kind of meld of mobile and static pieces. AI in its first instances in like Google Home, Alexa from Amazon. I think that's really going to start to change things and bring on the smart home piece. That's really exciting. The other thing I think that's in for me at the moment is probably more in a work sense is data, right? And I'm going to sound like a real sick nerd here. I'm sorry, but I'm loving delving into data at the moment. And so for me, I spend a lot of my day now sitting, delving through dashboards, looking at different numbers, and understanding the opportunities, but also understanding the stuff that we probably need to can or change or find ways to get out of. So I think in the fun space, AI is really starting to become cool. And then that data piece for me from a business sense.
Within this new world of data, then, how does gut play a role?
It still does. It absolutely does. Gut and ego need to play a bit. I think if people didn't have a bit of gut and didn't have a bit of ego, they wouldn't have started a business in the first place, right? And again, it comes back to that real kind of entrepreneurial, or if you're inside a business, intrapreneurial feel.
What's an entrepreneur?
Entrepreneur? Well, I guess, you've got entrepreneurs who start new businesses, right? But the reality is there's lots of businesses being disrupted day to day. Ask the taxi industry. They'll tell you that straight off the bat. So how do you, as someone who's in a business, look to innovate? Not necessarily all tech, people, process, strategy, small changes. I was talking to a business the other week, and they're a large energy business. And they're not South Australian, so they don't have Stobie poles. They've got wooden telegraph poles. And they noticed that the weather getting into these telegraph poles was making the wood split, and then that would cause all the electrical bits that were hanging off it to effectively break the bracket and fall off. They brought in wood specialists. They had the executive sitting around a table, all these people trying to work out and solve out what was happening. It's costing about $20 million a year. And they had a look and worked out there was this one area that wasn't having the problem. Everywhere around it was nothing to do with weather. None of those things were stopping it. And so they sent some guys out to have a look. And there's this guy, let's call him Jack, who's in the regional warehouse, who'd worked out this problem, got a piece of metal, capped it over the top, effectively like an umbrella for the telegraph pole, and solved the problem, right? And so there's an entrepreneur case. There's someone who's not at the highest executive, but they're doing stuff day to day. They know the product so well. And you know what? That little piece of metal that cost them, I think, about $10 per piece, saved them about $15 million overnight.
That is absolutely amazing. We've certainly given us all hope that we can play a part in innovation here in this state. Nick Condon, Executive Director, Innovation and Commercialisation at Business SA. Thanks so much for joining us on The In Show.
Thanks, guys. It's been great chatting.
It's all about innovation on The In Show. You can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and hear our interviews in full at theinshow.online.
What's in Adelaide, in Australia, and innovation?
Here's a few events to check out this week. Tomorrow, Marketers in a Pub have Event 3 in their Marketing Survivor Series at the Seven Stars Hotel in Angus Street. Marketers in a Pub is an informative and informal session with inspirational essay-based marketers and is an initiative of the Australian Marketing Institute. In this month's Feed Your Brain session, People and Technology Solving the Equation, Ken Wood examines the relationship between the evolution of technology and people. Held on Friday from 1 till 2 p.m. at the Flinders New Venture Institute, Ken will discuss the essential people skills required to remain competitive at a time when the growth of startups is expected to continue into the future. Understand what the decline in full-time jobs will mean for graduates and individuals, and the actions you can take to have the best chance at securing employment in your chosen career. And the Adelaide Smart City Studios holding a discussion on UX design next week. This will be an open discussion on how the user experience has now become extremely important to every startup. Having a deep understanding of your customer and the behaviours that will continue to bring customers back to your business now means you need a world-class UX. Register at AdelaideSmartCityStudio.com. Make sure you head to the inshow.online for all the details on these and all other events coming up this week. And guys, before you head out to your next event, download the Phoner app to find people easier and market yourself better. Download Phoner, that's PFONR, from the App Store now.
Thanks, Claire. And if you've got an event you'd like us to highlight, just contact us at theinshow.online.
Next week on The In Show.
Paula Turnbull from the Women in Innovation Awards will tell us about how this year's awards are shaping up, and we'll hear from Charlie Helen Robertson about Age Fitwear and how she's using crowdfunding to help get her started.
And as usual, Claire will be bringing us those interesting and sometimes pretty unusual stories from around the world and highlighting some of the events coming up. And make sure you check out theinshow.online. You can listen to the podcast, find out more about this week's guests, share an innovation you're working on, and of course, follow us on Facebook and Twitter.
Well, that just about wraps us up for this week again, Troy. We'll catch you next Monday for some more innovation on The In Show.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.